Okay, let's talk about hair. And in researching this episode, by talking to experts in the biology of hair and the stem cells that exist in all of us that give rise to our hair growth and the pigmentation in our hair, and in talking to experts who understand how to halt and even reverse hair loss, that there is a tremendously interesting biology surrounding hair. But there's also an incredible psychology around hair. In fact, most people who experience even marginal hair loss undergo pretty severe anxiety. Now, I confess this is not something I can relate to. I am losing my hair in certain places. I'm 47 years old. I've got a couple of patches up front where there's very minimal hair. I think that, as we'll later learn in this episode, reflects a higher density of DHT, dihydrotestosterone receptors at that particular location as opposed to elsewhere on my scalp. But keeping my hair is not something that I've fretted about much of my life. And yet, as I was researching this episode, I remembered an anecdote from my childhood where my father told me, and I think it was because I was stressing about something, and I was trying to get to sleep. And he said, "Don't stress, calm down. And here's why. If you stress too much, it can actually make your hair fall out." In fact, I have a cousin who lay down one night stressed and woke up the next morning and all of his hair was on his pillow. And I'll never forget that story. I think he was trying to get me to stress less. I don't know if that story made me stress less or not. But in any event, I don't know that that story is true. I'm not going to challenge the authenticity of that story. I didn't have a chance to reach out to my father and ask him to verify or not. But as we'll soon learn, it is true that our psychological well-being can impact both the coloration or lack thereof and the growth rates of our hair. That's a real thing. And the reverse is also true, which is that as hair starts to thin or fall out or change color, many people experience intense anxiety or even depression. This was not something I was really aware of. And perhaps that's just because I've always kept my hair pretty short anyway. I always assumed that if my hair started to really fall out, I would just shave my head. But that's me, and that's not most people out there. I think most people would loathe to lose their hair. And in fact, given the enormous number, probably up in the high billions of dollars and euros and other currency, of course, that people invest in trying to halt or reverse their hair loss, it's clear that hair is very, very important to people. What we know is that by age 50, approximately 50% of all men and women will have experienced significant enough hair loss that they start to notice it. And a large percentage, up to 85% of those people, will experience some sort of anxiety that leads them to go out and try and either halt or reverse that hair loss. Now, why at age 50? Well, an important point arises from that, which is that the hair loss is not occurring between the 49th and 50th birthday. Hair loss is ongoing from about age 30 to age 50. It's only by age 50, however, that about 50% of people out there start to notice that hair loss. And this is typically because they'll be in a bathroom or looking in a mirror, and the lighting will be bright enough that it permeates the sort of outer boundary of their hair, and they'll notice that their hair is thinning in a particular location. That's usually how this sort of thing happens. So again, our psychological states can impact our patterns of hair growth or loss, and of course, patterns of hair growth, but more typically hair loss and hair graying, can really impact psychological states. So this is a subject that people take intense interest in. And today we're going to talk about how hair normally grows, why it grows at the rate and for the duration that it happens to. And then as we talk about ways to intervene with that hair loss, those biological mechanisms will come up because they really provide a nice framework for explaining why certain treatments work more or less well, or why certain treatments might have certain side effects or total lack of side effects. It will also highlight a really key theme that will come up several times in today's podcast, which is that there are both mechanical and chemical approaches to slowing and reversing hair loss. Mechanical approaches would be things as simple as massaging the scalp, but mechanical changes to the scalp can cause either hair loss or facilitate hair growth. This is why things like microneedling are so prominent in the context of trying to reverse hair loss. But again, there are also chemical approaches to trying to halt or reverse hair loss. And this relates to the fact that the hair growth itself is strongly regulated by hormones such as estrogen, thyroid hormone, insulin-like growth factor, and that other hormones, in particular the androgens, so things like testosterone, but mainly its derivatives like dihydrotestosterone, are very much involved in setting the stage for hair growth by controlling how big or small that pool of stem cells that gives rise to hair growth is.